welcome back to the 41st episode of the StartWell Podcast. This time I'm joined in studio on King Street West in downtown Toronto here at StartWell by the illustrious co-founders, or two of the co-founders. We'll hear the larger story of how the company came to be of Carbon6, which is a member company here at StartWell. Their offices are resident at StartWell's campus on King Street West. And let's just jump into it. So here I am, sat with Nasim Saluji, and Qazi Ahmed.
Hi.
Guys, it's a pleasure to have you in studio. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
Right
great
on.
to be here.
I know that Carbon6 has been kind of in stealth mode, and I want to hear how it got into stealth mode to start off with. What is Carbon6? Or I should say, let's start at the beginning. What was Carbon6 when you guys started like figuring out what you wanted to do to create this company, and who is you guys anyway? How did you come together, and what your interest in the topic matter is? It's curious to me.
You want to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Maybe I'll get started. So Nasim and I know each other almost a decade at this point, and we went to business school together. Coming out of business school, we were doing different things, starting different companies, but we always wanted to, work on something together at some point. But we were trying to figure out what. About a year ago, I was exiting my last business, which was a roll-up of mental health clinics. And one of the lead investors there is actually our third co-founder, who's not here today because he's based out of the U.S. in Puerto Rico. He was actually an investor in that business.
Okay.
And as that business was exiting, we were starting to have conversations about what next, et cetera, et cetera. And this idea of Carbon6 was noodling around on his head. And, I'll go into a little bit about what Carbon6 is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are trying to sell online, right? Like on marketplace, on Amazon, on Walmart, on Shopify. And people sometimes think it's pretty easy to sell online, but it's actually pretty difficult. If you talk to a number of successful sellers, they're using anywhere between 8 to 15 different tools to run their business. The same way any of us use, DocuSign and DocSend and Zoom, et cetera, to run a business. Imagine a whole suite of tools to help run your business.
Right.
And Justin had been talking to some folks in his neighborhood who were successful Amazon sellers, and
literally in his residential neighborhood.
In his residential neighborhood, like literally in the pool. Like his kids are swimming with their kids, and he's like chatting with them by the pool.
Yeah.
And trying to understand what is this sort of new world of e-commerce, and what makes the people who are in this like nice neighborhood like successful versus the 10 million people who will try selling online.
Well, there you
this
go.
year.
That's interesting. Yeah, you're talking to a guy in a pool about how he bought the pool.
Exactly.
Basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so these guys are sitting there talking about their frustrations being, probably also removed from where the merchandise handling is and whatever other logistical concerns that they have.
Yeah. So I think the logistical. I mean, it's an actual business. Like you're running an actual business. But what, as he talked to them, what differentiated these successful sellers versus all the people who I want to try a side hustle selling something online and maybe make a go off it and don't succeed, is that they use a number of tools and have the right support systems to grow their business. But what became clear in those conversations was there's a lot of different tools out there that all do certain things really, really well, but nothing that sort of helps unify sort of the support system for the seller.
Okay.
At the same time, something very interesting was happening in the Amazon space and in the marketplace in general, where there were these aggregators that were buying these one-off Amazon brands. So there's an Amazon brand selling umbrellas. There's this other brand selling shoes. There's this other brand. And these aggregators came along that were buying up a lot of these sort of smaller businesses and putting them together. So the question came to Justin's head, like if that's happening in the online marketplace for the online marketplace brands, who's doing it for the softwares and services? Because it makes a lot of sense that you come to a company such as Carbon 6, and obviously it wasn't named at that point, and there's a suite of tools for you to improve your business versus trying to find a tool everywhere else. And so as that idea started germinating in his head, he and I started talking as I was leaving my last business, and saw sort of a super interesting space that we wanted to dive into. And that's essentially how Carbon 6 got born. Next step, I started talking to Nasim, and maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, like so I was building another business at the time, a biotech company, and I'm not a biotech leader. So
Right.
the idea was I had a passion for, in particular, neuroscience and the applications of psychedelics, and can go down that rabbit hole some other time.
Sure.
But
It's another
I'm
podcast.
not another podcast altogether. But I'm not a biotech leader, right?
Yeah.
So I was there setting up a business, hiring in a management team who would ultimately take it over. I was super excited at what the guys were doing, but I said I obviously don't have time to help right now. But as soon as I can jump in, I will, and invested some money, and literally as soon as I could, I jumped on board, and we've been building it together ever since.
So and Nasim, what were you doing before this company?
So a bunch. I guess we can go through our backgrounds.
Sure.
So
Like in the days since you were in B school together.
in the days since B school, so I was a consultant with McKinsey for a while before and after.
Okay.
And then spent my last number of years building startups. So had a revenue at a company called Top Hat here in Toronto.
Right, yeah.
Of course, you might know them. Ed tech company. We grew it over the course of my time there to reach about 80% of the largest 1,000 universities in North America.
Okay.
Kind of startup of the year, so we did pretty well there. Have set up a couple of other businesses since.
Wait, so you know David Sevitt?
Yeah, I know Dave Savage.
Right
Good dude.
on.
He's
Okay.
actually been around here quite a bit.
Yeah, with Shopify now.
Yeah.
I know Dave from McGill, and he plays jazz. He's a jazz pianist.
Really good dude.
And so, yeah, small world, because he was telling me about Top Hat, and I was like, hey, I know Mike, sort of, kind of. And anyway, I was like, I didn't realize Top Hat was such a big business.
It's a reasonably big business. I guess like we were always very people heavy for our size of company, because we just needed a big kind of distribution engine and back in the day. But the time when I left, we were about 400-ish people. And since then, the company's conducted a couple acquisitions, so it's a little bit bigger than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So software stuff, but always like sticking to this kind of like, how do you grow? How do you solve problems as an organization?
That kind of thing, right?
Business side of things.
Liking to play in the early stages, so kind of set up and scale up type of phases versus like once a business is, being optimized. Kind of prefer the early stage stuff when there's, an idea forming and
it's exciting, and it's not
there's
just about
excitement,
kind of
there's
stick handling
building.
HR issues.
Exactly. Right. And so
Nice. And then that's your customer base now, or that will be your customer base at Carbon 6, right? So all these companies trying to like scale and grow, and
exactly.
that's exciting.
And that's kind of what attracted us all to this model, right? When we talk to the entrepreneur, like they have the same problems that we do, right? Like they're people that are out there trying to make it in the world in one way or another, whether it's putting food on the table for their families or achieving financial freedom, quitting the 9-to-5, or, building something that can really help them make a go of things in a big way.
Yeah.
There's always a common set of problems, right? A common set of problems at every stage of the journey. But then there's a common set of problems that startups face when that, like, no entrepreneur wants to be dealing with inventory management, right? No
Right.
like it's just,
ergo
it's not a
drop
thing.
shipping, right? And then the drop shipping causes its own problems where people are like, hey, I can start an instant business. And then they're like, but I don't know how to run a business. Or the drop shipper stopped selling that product. What do I do?
Like no entrepreneur starts their business with the dream of doing like the finance and the tax at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Or like, like talking with lawyers, or like, if your drop shipper stops, how do you do customer returns? Like,
Oh, yeah.
These are problems everyone faces and all of us have faced before. But yeah, like that completely resonated as we started talking to people in the community.
And okay, so then you guys got together. You liked the idea. You kind of like product tested it or pre-betaed it with, conceptually with some sellers from day one. And
Well, we weren't actually building a product, right? So that's the different thing.
Okay, this is where it gets interesting. This is the twist, people.
Yeah. So the market, maybe it's worth kind of giving you a bit of an overview of the market. So it's about $500 billion of sales that happens through Amazon's marketplace, right? So it's the largest driver of its revenue, one of the two largest drivers of its profitability. It's a massive thing, right? And close to 70% of the money that comes into the Amazon marketplace comes from private sellers.
Mm-hmm.
So people selling myriad different products, right? Now these sellers, which we didn't know, use between 8 and 15 different tools to help them manage their businesses. Sure. And there've been a bunch of brand aggregators who've been buying up sellers, putting them together into kind of bigger enterprises.
Mm-hmm. Like Amazon itself. In some ways, Amazon,
I would say
that's kind of a branding
more like
play.
Launch their own brands and compete. Whereas like companies like Thrasio or Perch or Heyday or SellerX, they're going out and buying individual brands, helping them scale, basically becoming a bigger house of brands, kind of model, right? So we hadn't seen people doing this or many doing this in the software space, and when you look at the market for software that sells to these folks, it's highly fragmented. Right, so
you're talking specific tools designed for Amazon sellers?
Yeah. So imagine a tool. So let's say I'm a seller who sells mugs on Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. There's 1,000 other sellers of mugs on Amazon. How do I succeed? I need to figure out what people are searching for when they're looking for mugs. So I do keyword research. Mm-hmm. There's a tool that helps me do keyword research. I need to realize and figure out, are mugs the best things to sell on Amazon, or do I have a lot of competition? So I want to do product research. That's a tool for product research. Now I have a product that I want to sell. I need, when someone searches mug or coffee mug, I want to be in the first page, not in the 5th page. How do I get on the first page? I must have the right sort of keywords and the right listing and the right kind of content on the listing, the best kind of pictures, because that's what tells Amazon's algorithm that, this is a good listing, put it at the top. So you need listing quality optimization, you need content creation, and a whole bunch of other things to make your listing stand out.
Sure.
You need to pay Amazon for pay-per-click, saying when someone searches for black coffee mug, put me as a sponsored product. And you need tools to help optimize it. How much do I want to bid for this keyword versus that keyword?
Right.
You need a tool to optimize your spend on Google so that when someone searches for coffee mug Amazon, it shows your page and when people. So on and on and on and on and on.
Gets expensive and takes a lot of resources to focus on how to best position your products.
And exactly. And imagine doing all of that without any tools, where you are trying to figure out by going to Amazon.com, figuring out what keywords are the right one, figure out how much money you should spend, like all of that. That's why there's these tools that exist to help automate that.
It's funny because we're sitting here now. I've never sold anything on Amazon. But like, I would consider myself a bit of a e-com OG in that in 98, when eBay was new that year? I don't know, 98, 99? I was one of the first people on eBay, and I was selling, I would go to Steve's music shop in Montreal down the road from where I lived at, when I went to McGill. I'd buy foreign instruments and tablas and calabash things and all this, maracas and stuff. And I would sell it on eBay to people in like Texas that didn't have funky instrument stores in their neighborhoods. And I made a tidy business
there you go.
Doing e-com.
100%.
And it's so funny to hear what you're saying, because in all these years since, like 20 years plus, I haven't thought about the fact that Amazon essentially is kind of like a microcosmic, Google / the web.
Yeah. So you want to hear a crazy statistic?
Yeah.
I think we learned this recently. I think 60 or 65% of product searches in North America actually happen on Amazon. So when people are looking to search something, they go to Amazon and search for it first.
That's very interesting, because with all the work that Google's been doing to float e-com up in the last couple of years, it's still just fighting for relevance, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. So, I mean, Google by far wins in the sort of the discovery phase still. Like, okay, what is it that you want? You're like trying to understand a category, et cetera, et cetera. When someone's saying, I want to buy a pen.
Yeah.
nearly half of those searches, people are going to Amazon first and searching for pen versus Google.
Yeah.
I would assume that, your average seller, especially in North America or in any kind of like Amazon Prime service area in the world, frequent users of Amazon are going to use Amazon for market research, like just guessing like what kind of TVs are there. Forget about buying. I'll buy it later maybe, but just for market research or consumer research, they're probably going to go to the market. Right? It's like walking down to the store and taking a look.
They'll do that too, for sure. But especially at the bottom of the funnel where you're ready to make a purchase decision.
Sure.
Then you're going into Amazon, more than half the time, which is great business for them, obviously, because their pay-per-click is just that much more valuable. Because if I'm searching for that black coffee mug, then chances are I'm going to go buy a black coffee mug and maybe something else too.
I think what would be interesting for me and also for our audience is to learn a little bit, because you guys know all this stuff very well. You know the Amazon ecosystem very well. Give us a sense of how the world's manufacturers and customer-facing brands at large that do sell online, how they are intent upon improving their presence on Amazon, or what their relationships generally are. I know this is like a meta question, but like you think of a lot of these. We started with this kind of like Etsy mom and pop question of like someone gets a store and then they have all these issues and they want to like sell and they're buying their freedom and they're escaping their job. But on the flip side, you're a large corporate, CPG company, and you see this massive access to market open up. So what's the range of type of seller, and how applicable are these tools you see a need for to that range?
Huge range, right? So the large enterprise is increasingly looking to go online. So when you look at agencies that are working with and supporting them, it's been a massive growth business over the last number of years, and the agencies that are supporting these large corporations are booming, doubling, tripling in size every year. The corps are using a number of different software sets and tools, and there are companies out there that are helping them go multi-channel as well, right? So kind of go across multiple different marketplaces. So that's definitely a piece. When we think about the seller journey, it ranges everywhere from the newbie seller who wants to sell online, typically an entrepreneur or wannabe entrepreneur, right? Who wants to get out there and sell, through to somebody who's started making sales and has kind of a business, somebody who's made a six-figure kind of selling business, which means chances are at a 20% margin, it's a side business for most, right? To scaling it up a little bit more to a point where it could become a full-time thing, to being an aggregator or being a large enterprise that sells large volume, all the way through to those who are coming into the market, like the P&Gs of the world, the Unilevers, who are selling mass product, right? So when we look at our business, we're focused primarily on the entrepreneur. So we don't look at the large enterprise. We'll serve the aggregator of brands, right? But we're looking primarily at that entrepreneur who is trying to figure out how to be successful, or has a brand already, or has a business already, and wants to scale it. And in that market, there's a few different kind of places, a few different subsectors. One is private label, which is the largest subsector. These are people who have or have launched their own brands, or are seeking to launch their own brands. This could be like, QASIM's mugs, right?
Yeah.
Could be his brand. The Merch by Amazon space is a much smaller niche space, but one that we have a presence in, where this is like people with print on demand. So if like there's some kind of cool trend or design, or if it's like it's Christmas time, everyone wants a Christmas shirt, or like
it's a drop shipping idea, right?
It's kind of. It's like, I'll give you an example. When Let's Go Brandon was trending.
Who?
Let's Go Brandon.
Man, I'm so out of touch with I'm out of touch with the memes in the world.
If you're like a Canadian or a Democrat, you probably don't know it.
I'm in dad mode. I'm in full dad mode.
But this is like huge seller.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look it up. I mean, it was a trending line in the US. When end of last year?
Yeah, end of last year. So like this was where like this guy Brandon kind of won this massive race, and then the crowd starts cheering F Joe Biden.
Okay.
F Joe Biden. So they're yelling this very loudly. And the commentator comes up to the dude who's Brandon and says,
"They're cheering your name. They're saying let's go Brandon when the crowd is not saying that."
Right. Right.
So that became a big viral meme.
Okay.
And so all these T-shirts popped up saying "Let's go Brandon," etc., etc. What it was was, people weren't manufacturing T-shirts. People were coming up with cool designs and then putting it on what's called Merch by Amazon, which is like basically a print-on-demand service that they have.
Sure.
I actually don't know if they have it here in Canada. But you go to Amazon.com, or actually one of these sort of, there's a few other print-on-demand platforms like that out there, and say, I want a Printful. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want a Let's Go Brandon T-shirt. And all these designs come up. Yeah. And I want this one. So Amazon actually prints it for you and ships it to you and charges you money and gives a royalty to the entrepreneur who came up with the design. So that's one of the verticals, for example, that we serve.
Okay.
And this is an interesting one. It's small, right? But it's growing fast. And ultimately, when Amazon sets its mind to winning a category, it finds a way to win. And so that's one that we see growing quite a bit over the next few years. Another one that's always been there through the e-commerce journey across platforms has been wholesale, right? And so we have a business supporting wholesalers as well as an arbitrage business. So people who kind of find things cheaper somewhere else and kind of resell them and take advantage of those cost arbitrage opportunities. So we have products that serve all of those different verticals, but really targeted on that entrepreneur, wherever the entrepreneur is in the journey.
Okay, so you let's jump into this idea of kind of like you don't have a software development team, or you didn't start that way. You started looking for these tools to aggregate them, to essentially buy them to create a holistic offering, right? Tell me, as a business model, what was forming on paper before you bought your first, Amazon seller service company or software company?
Yeah, so what was forming on paper was really understanding what Naseem just described.
Sure.
Like, what is the seller journey and what are the different verticals in the space?
Yeah.
And understanding that, when people think about selling on Amazon, like the largest space is this private label, like, QASIM's mugs or Kazi's iPhone cases, etc. But while that is the biggest place, that is actually, getting more and more competitive to win at. You need more capital to start. If you probably shouldn't trying to start a business on Amazon doing that, unless you have a certain amount of money. Yeah. Because you need to budget for buying inventory. You need to budget for it being shipped from wherever you're getting it from. You need to budget for it being in storage. You got to budget for like PPC ads. So there may be other areas you want to start off. Like you want to start in Merch by Amazon, because there's actually zero cost to start. You just have to be, understand what designs are trending.
Yeah,
and
it's
create
like almost
designs.
just market testing with no collateral damage on your wallet. Yeah.
Arbitrage requires very little capital to start. Wholesale doesn't take much capital to start. So there's all these ways to get started in your journey. But, you could then keep just doing that as a side hustle, or after you, make some money and sort of, sink your teeth into e-commerce. Then, you started with merch, but you're now making some money. Maybe you start getting into wholesale or arbitrage. Or once you sort of sunk your teeth into, you're doing wholesale and arbitrage, you know how to do sourcing, you need to do like some finance, then you're ready to make the investment to go into private label. Sort of understanding these segments and how they play with each other was sort of the starting point.
Sure.
And so a lot of the tools we bought in the beginning were really around sort of the new seller, like the Merch by Amazon space, the wholesale space, the arbitrage space, and a couple of private label tools as well. But, going back to your question about what was on paper, it was starting to understand what the seller journey is and what the different verticals are and what their needs are, and finding essentially best-in-class tools for those and starting to put that together with an initial focus on sort of the early seller and then start getting into the rest.
So similarly, have you defined a kind of a profile of the entrepreneur or the company that would start the companies that you're acquiring?
For sure. Like,
are they sellers trying to improve their journey?
By and large, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So in the vast majority of cases, they're sellers. And so Amazon opened up its APIs to developers a few years ago, right, to start building on the Amazon marketplace. There wasn't really much capability to do this previously. And so over the past few years, particularly the past 5 years, you've seen this mass emergence of software supporting Amazon sellers with different stages of their journeys. But these softwares are typically relatively subscale. So you've got QASIM, the entrepreneur, who already has his mug business, and he has his t-shirt business, and he's also doing some other online business, and he's realized that he has a problem with dashboards and visualization because he went around and looked around. He didn't like any of the ways that anybody else was visualizing their data, so he built a new data platform. And he built this new data platform, and he got a few kind of customers on board, and he grew the thing to being $500,000 or $1 million in revenue. And now he's like, well, where do I go? So I've got this data platform. I've got my mugs business.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, now I have to support software development. It did everything I needed, but my customers need 5 times more stuff. What do I do? Do I kill it? Do I sell it? Who do I sell it to?
Do I grow it? Yeah.
Exactly. And these entrepreneurs are facing these decisions. And there isn't really a market to buy QASIM's
software company Amazon,
in a meaningful way, right? Like, there definitely wasn't when we started, and now people are starting to hear about it, and so we're hearing some of the wolves circling. But at the beginning, there wasn't really anybody doing that.
Yeah.
And QASIM obviously had needs, and we obviously had huge potential for us to be able to grow that tool in multiple different ways, right?
Sure.
Because a lot of these entrepreneurs, it's themselves plus some software developers. They're not marketing their businesses. They're not thinking about, these are the 10 different marketing channels I can use, and this is going to be the best one for my business. They're not thinking, okay, I've got this dashboard solution. I also have a pay-per-click solution that can be optimized and integrate with my dashboard solution.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also thinking about how to manage my inventory. I'm also thinking about X, Y, Z. And then they're not thinking about the cross-sell opportunity between their platform and other platforms.
No, I see how, coming in as an umbrella, for all of these different things, for the people you're trying to acquire or partner with for the software makes sense. The value prop makes sense. For the customer, is the initial approach to market going to be a bundled service package? Because I'm guessing these are all disparate softwares. So stitching them together and re-engineering them will take some time to create the ERP solution for Amazon sellers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, that's where that is definitely the plan and the path. I mean, we are still offering the softwares sort of individually. We did our first bundle last month as we emerged out of stealth in Prosper. So we had the Prosper bundle with 4 of our tools together.
What is Prosper?
So
Prosper is a large industry trade event.
Okay.
It's the event for the Amazon seller in North America. And so for us, it was our coming out party. It was our coming out of stealth party. So
this was when you went to Vegas.
This was when we went to Vegas.
That's right. You guys were excited about that trip. I remember we never talked afterwards. Yeah. So that's
because whatever happens in Vegas
stays in Vegas.
We can't talk about that here. Come on.
But yeah, man, we came out in full force. So we sponsored the opening pool party of this event.
Wow.
We sponsored a couple of other events there. We got the kind of sickest booth at the event so that people would come out and they'd say, well, who are these Carbon 6 guys? So nobody had heard of Carbon 6.
But because you had to rustle the bushes to be able to find the companies to be customers, but also to be acquisition targets, right?
And coming into this event, we'd already talked to a number of the software companies. We already bought 11 going on 12 different tools.
Oh, wow, okay.
And we'd already started networking our way through the influencer community. But en masse, there were still a ton of people in that influencer community and in the senior seller community who'd never heard of us. And so this was an opportunity for us, before coming out in a big way publicly, you've seen no press release about us yet or anything like that, to come out publicly within the community. And so we got this beautiful booth. We came with an army of 15 or 17 of us and, came out and just had a lot of fun. Nice. And the idea of it was, market the Prosper bundle, sure, and also just start connecting with companies that could be great partners with us. Because when we think about companies to potentially acquire, we're not really thinking about them as acquisitions. We're thinking about them as partners.
Okay.
We've, designed kind of at least started speaking, building out our roadmap in terms of what we want to buy, build, or partner. And most of the time we're saying, okay, well, we have a need here. And you as the entrepreneur want something else, right? And it may be an exit or partial exit, which is what they inevitably come for. But it's also to be part of something big, something exciting, something that could change the industry and change the community. Because if what you do is e-commerce and you're a seller and you're a software builder, like who would turn down the opportunity to be part of building something special together? And so that's the vibe we're going for. It's to build a
Makes
big
sense.
tent and bring the community together.
Yeah, I think 80%, if not higher, of the founders of the tools we've bought have actually joined Carbon 6 team.
Yeah, they're like excited.
And Naseem and the marketing team came up with sort of our tagline. Entrepreneurs should do what they love. We do the rest.
Yep.
Which I think is actually
Hey man, that's my tag.
which is actually a perfect tagline for us because it works in both directions. It is what we are trying to do for the seller, the Amazon seller, the marketplace seller, someone who's in the future looking to sell on Walmart, wherever.
Yep.
Do what you love. We provide you with the tools and services that you need for everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But it sits just as true for the companies we acquire or we partner with, because the biggest reason some of these founders would want to sell their company is because of everything all of us have gone through. Like,
Right.
we start a business because we fall in love with the idea of it, but there's taxes to do and talking to lawyers,
there's so much.
and
Yeah, absolutely.
HR this and payroll that, and it adds up. What we are partnering with the software founders on is, let's get you back to doing what it is that you love, which is thinking about your product, thinking about your customer, thinking about like talking to your customer, like whatever it is that you love doing.
Mm-hmm.
We take care of everything else. Like, we have our centralized back office, we have our centralized marketing, we have our centralized customer support. Let us take care of all of that, and you actually join us and sort of become part of this big team that's putting together something special in the industry.
Super exciting. So what? I guess there's a Series A that's closed, or
Yeah, we're not announcing it quite yet,
just yet,
but yes.
but it's closed.
but that's part of the idea, right? Is to raise some capital, keep raising some capital to keep growing the network of tools and services.
That's right.
That's super exciting.
Yeah.
You might not be able to talk about the actual finances that went into the pool for that yet, but are you finding interest that's global for this play and to support Carbon 6?
Very much so.
That's
And
exciting.
So our investor pool is coming from countries around the world, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
The lead VC that invested in us has a global network. So they have offices all around the world, and they've actually backed companies in the e-commerce space in other parts of the world where there are big synergies for us and potential collaborations as we think about expansion to other markets. So that's really exciting to us, and that's one of the reasons that we're excited about going with them.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we see an opportunity to raise a lot of capital because it's not a pure play VC strategy. It's a VC strategy where we can drive significant growth out of our assets, but there's also cash flowing companies that we're buying.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an opportunity to layer on venture debt and think about bigger opportunities for financing as well.
Absolutely. No, I mean, there's so many opportunities to lever this almost platform software play, because if all goes well, which it sounds like it's already going well, the race to ubiquity is kind of there. That's super exciting. Tell me, I think we'll do a second session. That'll be the follow up to this part that digs into the product, digs into the kind of like what maybe a seller experience is working with your tools, paired with someone on your team that can explain the tools. That'll be really fun. We could do an interactive session for the podcast. But I'll leave it with, or this discussion today, with a question about being based in Toronto. So if your sourcing of capital to support Carbon 6, is global, and obviously the Amazon seller network is global, and I'm sure you're finding software opportunities to acquire or partner with that are all over the world. What does Toronto mean to Carbon 6 and being based in Canada mean?
Well, it's home, right? And it's like, I guess the two of us are both the Canadian story in different ways, right? Like I was born and raised here, but the child of immigrants who came here for a better opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And
I actually have a kind of an interesting story. So I grew up, I was born in Bangladesh. I grew up in Bangkok. And then came for undergrad to the US for the first time. That's the first time I'd been to North America. after graduating undergrad, I actually got a job in the U.S. and I was probably going to stay in the U.S. But after about a year there, I actually didn't get my work visa because it was a lottery system there.
Oh my God.
And then at that point, my company was kind enough to say, okay, we'll send you to Canada for a year.
We're the backup plan. Right? Go Canada.
Yeah. So then I moved to Toronto for what was supposed to be a year. Fell in love with the city. Fell in love with a girl there who then in the future became my wife. And then and then over time, I went back to the US for business school. Then, instead of staying in the US, decided to come back. So, Toronto has become sort of is a home for me now. And through that journey, I've sort of seen the growth of Canada and Toronto in terms of, attracting people from all over the world and the community and the tech talent it's been bringing on has been super, super impressive. So, when trying to build a company like this, Carbon 6 is an American company, and our founder, like Justin I mentioned, is American.
Right.
It's there. But both of us are here, and we're looking to build a big team here in Toronto. And, what excites us is sort of the vibrancy of the city and where it's going.
And Toronto's our core, operational hub. So other than Justin, we just brought on board a COO who starts on Monday. I probably shouldn't announce his name yet because he I don't think he's changed his LinkedIn or anything like that.
Okay.
So we'll let him make his announcement first.
Let him tell his former employer.
Yeah. But somebody I'm close with from a past life. And we've been kind of building our core, some of our core leadership team here. So the way that the team has grown is, we have people that we've acquired that are all over the world, right? And we have a couple of dev teams in different countries.
Sure.
But our core brain trust, a lot of our core brain trust is going to be built in Toronto. We're going to think about this as our head office.
That's exciting. At StartWell.
There you go.
Building here at StartWell.
Yeah. Brilliant. We're yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was in the same studio here with some leadership from TechTO, right, which is like Canada's largest tech community.
Yep.
And we were talking about kind of like the state of the industry and the fact that TechTO has been around for 10 years. And within that period, the growth of the software industry here in Canada has just been exponential. And their own community now being 50,000 subscribers is just indicative of the fact that kind of it feels like right place, right time in Toronto right now anyway. And the next decade is kind of what we were postulating about and how that exponentiality is not going to stop. I don't think anyone in the sector believes that things are going to slow down. So it's a super exciting time to be building a company, I think, like yours here. And
100%.
the next few years are going to be even more exciting.
That's right.
Sure.
Awesome, guys. Well, it was really nice spending some time to dig into Carbon 6 at this exciting juncture in your startup story. It's early on, but you've accomplished so much. How many tools are in the portfolio now? 12?
12 companies acquired. I
Next
guess we
week
could say
it'll be
there's even more
15.
tools.
It's growing. It's growing.
It's growing fast.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the growth so far. It's so awesome to see the team grow as well here on campus. And we're excited. I'm excited to do a follow-up to dig into the actualities of kind of what the seller experience is. So we'll line up that second session with some other members of your team.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
And thanks again for joining me in studio.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, man.
All right.
Thank you.